Obviously, the big news over the weekend is that North Dakota lost its Attorney General, Wayne Stenjum, passing away unexpectedly. We'll visit with Dave Thompson in a little bit. I knew Dave, and I first got to know Dave as a reporter with public radio. And Dave and Wayne were good friends. You might say, well, gee, a reporter and a politician. They were friends in so many different ways than professional. I mean, these were individuals that every time I saw them, they were playing trivia at some point or another with groups of friends from people on both sides of the aisle. So Dave's a good one to touch base and kind of get a take on what Wayne meant to him as somebody who saw his career go through years and years of public service to North Dakota. Also a good friend and somebody who worked with him on a very close basis. The Industrial Commission is the most important board or commission, whatever you want to call it, in the state of North Dakota. You've got the governor, Doug Burgum, you've got the Attorney General, then Wayne Stenjum, and you have Doug Goehring, North Dakota's Ag Commissioner, and Doug joins us right now. Commissioner, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Hi, Joel. Good to see you again.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say I'm sorry for the loss of your friend. I really am, Doug.
Well, thank you. It's I think I told you when we first got on, I was it took till Saturday just really for it to sink in. You see someone on a regular basis, and our history goes back many years, starting in 2004 when we started campaigning together. And I knew him on a personal level, I knew him on a political level, and I knew him as we worked together in a working relationship on behalf of the state of North Dakota. So it's going to be tough without having him there, where we discuss multiple issues, whether it was WOTUS or when we worked together on the Industrial Commission, and we were pretty limited in what we could talk about, without a meeting going on. So it always went to the personal side, it seemed, or at least work-related issues that I was dealing with in my department or we were working on together that was for the state or the region.
The one thing I guess I always respected was not many people are willing to challenge a governor in any state. And you and Wayne, as two members of the Industrial Commission, weren't just rubber stamps. You were comfortable taking on the governor, comfortable giving an opposing view, and quite comfortably many times winning when it came to the vote, because it is a three-person vote. And I didn't hear you take on the governor in a personal sense, but I think the two of you, stuck to your guns, and that's not always easy, Commissioner. That isn't, and yet you and Wayne did.
Well, and no disrespect to the governor or any of the governors I've served with, there were times where it was out of principle, it was out of perspective, it was out of personal knowledge, experience. It was that point of view that you brought forward, and whether it was dealing with oil and gas issues, whether it was dealing with Public Finance Authority, transmission, whether we're talking about the Bank of North Dakota or whether we were dealing with the state mill and elevator, we all brought something different to the table, and not all the time did all of us agree. There were times where I was outnumbered, but I was comfortable in sharing my position, why I felt I should defend that position, and the chips fell where they may.
I want to talk to you a little bit about where we sit in agriculture today. Obviously, everybody looking at, many people having sold, every farmer that I know usually sells off a third of their crop before they put it in the ground. And of course, at some of the prices that we've seen, they were pretty anxious to this year. That being said, right now they're sitting there wondering when spring's going to come around, working on some equipment, making sure they're ready for when spring hits. And every farmer I've been talking to lately, while they like the prices, and believe me, they like the prices, the one thing that they talk about a lot is the price of fertilizer and what some of those input costs are going to be. You talk to more farmers than probably I do, and I'm curious what you're hearing out there.
There is a lot of anxiety. Some people had a chance to put some fertility on last spring or last fall, and others are looking at this spring and going to try and either between now and then make a decision about securing some, and actually the price has been moving. Others have talked about the fact that the Corn Belt put so much on this last fall that maybe it's going to lessen our supply issue this spring, so it should provide us some relief. Others are looking at trying to stretch this out and top dress as the crop is coming up. Everybody's got a different position they're going to take, a different way of approaching their operation. We're still going to be hamstrung with the fact that we can't access product out of Europe or out of China. And in fact, Europe, because of regulations, have just clamped down, shut down, and with the price of natural gas going up, it's even harmed them more. So they're out in the world market now pulling more product off, which makes it even more difficult. And then we got crop protection products where we actually source a lot of the base or active ingredients and products from India and China. So that just puts us in more of a bind as we look at that side of the equation too.
How much crop, Commissioner, is still in the bin? Are you guys able to track that in your office? How much has gone to market? How much that farmer held on to? Because, like my uncle used to say, the prices can be absolutely great, but I didn't sell. So what have you heard out there, Doug?
So in about 60% of the state, there's a lot less crop that got harvested this year. And then on a few places, they actually told me nothing got harvested. So they have nothing to sell. Some of the farmers had an opportunity to hold part of what they harvested. Some already had, as you alluded to, they contracted earlier in the year. They had obligations to fill. And it was some of that leftover crop that they started marketing, or they set some goals and targets and they hit that. And from what I'm hearing, and this isn't everybody in the ag industry, but most have said that a lot of their stuff's gone. They might have some left in the bin, but it might be closer to 10% if you looked at what's across the state.
Let's focus for just 1 second, Commissioner, on those individuals, as you pointed out, that didn't even get a chance to harvest some of those fields. It was a weird year. I mean, they went from drought to being too wet all in the same time in the south central part of the state. I'm not as close to people in other areas. I mean, that's kind of home for me, in hunting country, so I get a chance to talk to some of the farmers and ranchers there. But those guys paid one heck of a price, and it was weird because it all of a sudden they couldn't get out there to harvest if they wanted to. It was so wet. I mean, did you talk to some of those guys?
Yeah, actually, our farm was one of them that got hit like that too. We got 6.5, 7 inches of rain in a 3-4 week period right in the fall, and not that we had a lot to harvest, but we did have some hay to bring in. And we had a little bit of soybeans to finish up, and we had a little over 100 acres of corn that actually ended up getting harvested this year. And we had to hold off a while, but others got even more rain than that. And like they said, they got more rain in that period of time than they got in a 2-year period.
Yeah.
Because actually when the drought started, it was in 2020.
The big thing that surprised me the most, though, was the varieties. When I was growing up, you didn't see corn north of Highway 46. You just didn't. I went to the University of North Dakota to school. Don't tease me, or I get to tease you back. But I went to the University of North Dakota to school, and with corn comes hunting opportunities. I'm sorry, but it does. When I went to UND, there was nothing to shoot up there but doves. Then corn made its way all the way to where you've got people in Peasic getting 180 bushel corn. I mean,
Yeah.
that's about varieties. That's just astounding to me that they're able to do that, Commissioner.
Yeah, with the well, biotech, technology, the breeding programs, everything that's went into the development of a lot of these hybrids, uh, we really weren't on anybody's radar. I remember back in the late 80s and 90s when I was planting corn, boy, you were stuck with one or two varieties from two different companies, and that was it. They started paying attention. And the other thing that helped is we had a corn breeding program in North Dakota at NDSU where that they were making a lot of great varieties or coming up with great genetics. But the experience that they gained, and then they went on to be breeders and researchers with the companies, they started conveying and relating some of those challenges and some of the things they thought they could do. And quite frankly, they helped propel the industry forward to start looking at the Northern Plains. And when biotechnology came into existence, that really helped us also because it gave us more tools in the toolbox. As you so rightly pointed out, we saw diversification on our farms. We saw more and more crops. We used to have a handful of crops that were being planted on most farms across North Dakota. All of a sudden, we had more row crops, and it created more diversity. It supported more wildlife. And now we got to the point where people were complaining about the amount of deer and sometimes the turkeys that all of a sudden appeared, and the abundant pheasant that were out there. So yeah, our breeding programs research is so critical. It's so essential, and it's really put agriculture where it's at today.
We held on to him for a little bit longer. That's right. Doug Goehring stays with us, North Dakota's Ag Commissioner. Commissioner Goehring, want to talk to you about the trucker shortage. I want to talk to you about how we don't have the truck drivers to move the product. We don't have the ability to get up and down from Canada the way we would hope we do. I mean, what's going on when it comes to trucking the very product we raise right here?
Well, and that gets to be a real challenge because a lot of people think, yeah, we're getting product from Canada, and that's true. We get some manufactured goods, some things come into the United States, but there's an awful lot that goes north of the border, and that becomes challenging when there's restrictions at the border with respect to vaccine mandates. And this was kind of a tit for tat when you look at first, the United States took a position that we have essential workers. We want to continue to keep the flow of goods and services going. And then all of a sudden, we put this mandate on and says by January 22nd, you're going to have to be vaccinated if you go across that border. So Canada turned around and did the same thing. And it's just caused so much disruption. We already got a labor issue. We have a supply chain issue. We have a truck driver shortage in the United States of 81,000. Now, 3 years ago, we were at 61,000 truck drivers shortage. And now we're at 81,000 is what's been determined here at the end of 2021. We can't handle this within our borders, let alone now you're restricting our ability to have commerce going across the border. A lot of corn, a lot of barley, a lot of other products go into that Canadian market, and including some pulse crops that go out of there for shipment and processing. So these things are just no thought has really went into them before people start taking positions, being political, and then all of a sudden we got a mess, and then people are trying to find a way to back out of it.
So how do we fix it? Because it's been there for a while now. It's been very noticeable for 3-4 years, and individuals leaving the trucking industry. I remember talking to you about, driving back and forth to work. For me, that's 130 miles every day for sure. And, and I remember talking to you, Doug, about, man, I've seen more semis out there on the road than ever before. I mean, this nation had really turned to that, to moving its product, and then to find out that we don't have that same ability. I know I know guys with rigs just sitting there waiting for drivers. How do we fix it? Canada aside, how do we fix it so we get drivers down here?
So that was one of the first things when I came into office that we started addressing, because the motor carriers nationally came to us at NASDA and said, "Hey, can you help us? We got this problem." And it first started out with enhancing unemployment insurance or extending benefits without any real accountability or oversight. That was the first and foremost. That was a problem back in 2010, 2009. Now, over that period of time, what happened was electronic logging devices. When those came out, there wasn't a standard, there wasn't one type, there was so many different companies putting them out, but it was required by the federal government to have these electronic logging devices. Here you had drivers that were competent, they were healthy, and they were a little older, and they said, these things are impossible and difficult to use. There was nothing wrong with what was going on before, except for a few states in the South and out West were having fits. And all of a sudden, they just thought this was a good way to track and make sure that they're logging their time efficiently and effectively. And then they were hooking them up, as I was told, to some of the trucks and into the computers, so that when it hit a certain time, that truck would power down and you had to find a place to pull over and park until you had your 8 hours. So that was part of the problem. Then we had another problem. Within many of the Midwest states, we have drivers that are 18 years of age and can drive intra-state within the state, but they weren't allowed to go over the road. Now, you got to put some things in place for that. And ultimately, I will give DOT and the Federal Motor Carriers Safety Administration credit, because after 12 years of beating on this issue, they finally recently said, okay, we're going to allow for those 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to drive interstate with someone else. And that's fine. That's a good start. But see, that's part of the problem. If we don't let them find this career when they get out of high school, when they're 21, they're not going to come back to it. And now on February 7th, they have another regulation coming out that's going to require all of these new drivers to be certified. And so you got to have a certified trainer riding with them for 300-400 hours. And it's like, holy cow, how much more are we going to, handcuff the industry and then expect our goods and services to make it on time, or to be someplace, or to happen at all?
I'm going to throw one more. You just mentioned two, but you're probably going to disagree with me on this one, but heck, I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican. We can't agree all the time. I think we're too strict on our drug testing. I do. I think that we make it so strict that, here's the truth. Some of these guys are smoking pot, okay? Some of society is smoking pot. And that pot stays in your system so long that you're not to the point where once you're being tested, you can't drive. You're to the point where there's a trace of it left in you from 7 days ago. And so I worry about that. You've got states where marijuana has become legal, and yet there doesn't seem to be any common sense. We went to a .04 when it comes to DUI when you're in the rig, and that's a good rule. I mean, I think both you and I would agree with that. But, man, we have gotten so strict when it comes to the marijuana standard with the zero tolerance. And I think there's a lot of guys that don't truck because of that, Doug. I really do.
Well, and that could very well be. And I'll just say, I think there's ways to quantify how inhibited someone is or under the influence, much like we do with a blood alcohol test. We don't seem to do that with other things. But I'll tell you that if you work for the railroad, you're an engineer, or if you drive a truck, if there's an accident, the first thing that happens is, hey, you're getting tested, and they want to throw the book at you. And yet, the motoring public is part of the problem here. You know how many cars pull out in front of semis? That's 80,000 pounds. I drive a semi. You know how hard it is to stop within a quarter of a mile, let alone 200 feet. That's almost impossible. But because you have stupid actions by the motoring public, they turn around and they put most of the regulations on the trucking industry and say, you're the problem out there, so we're trying to cite every little thing that's going on and impede their ability to actually deliver on those goods and services. And if there were ways to quantify what was actually in someone's system, I think that'd be good. And it would probably be things that we need to consider going forward. Not that I'm supporting the use of substances that may be illegal in some states.
No, I think it's just common sense, what you just said. All right, little bit of time we have left. I got two more for you. Number one, the specialty crop block grants, where we're at with that. Where is North Dakota when it comes to that?
We're right at the top. We have a lot to hang our hats on with respect to specialty crops. Those include the peas, the lentils, the dry bean industry, and North Dakota is right at the top when it comes to pulse crops and specialty crops. Potatoes and sunflowers fall under that also. We also have many of the produce and some of the research that's being done now for whether it's onions, you're looking at the lettuce industry, all those things that are kind of starting to find their way into North Dakota's, production, not on a large commercial scale, but it has to have a starting place, and especially crop block grants is helping. We're at $3.2 million. That is amazing. And I know that I've been told by some of the previous USDA Secretary staff with different secretaries there that how come North Dakota is getting so much of this money? And each one of them have heard my story someplace else, and they said, oh my God, do you realize they're number one in 10 different commodities, number two in several others? And by the way, when it comes to navy beans, pinto beans, all dry bean production, they raise 37% of the nation's dry beans in North Dakota, or the pea and lentil production that's there, the sunflower production, potato and sugar beets are right up there. So they now are very well aware that North Dakota produces a variety of crops, and quite frankly, they see the good work that comes out of North Dakota, and it supports the industry clear across the nation.
Last one, I promise. Are you running again?
I haven't said no, but I think for all intents purposes, I mean, yes, I just haven't had a chance to get anything out there. It's been busy around here.
Yeah.
So
again, tell your staff, tell Wayne's staff, tell everybody that you see in the Capitol I used to work at how sorry we are for Wayne's loss. Doug.
Well, thank you very much, Joel.